Hi everyone, this is Aquila, doing another demonstration here of an assignment that I did for my GUI Programming paper, which was in the first semester of my Graduate Diploma of Computing. So this, even though it was for my GUI Programming course, which was kind of a bit more on the applications development side, this was the closest we got to making a game. And the reason for making this particular kind of game is that this was a little bit more involved in logic and a few other sort of different things that I'll get into a little bit later. But first of all, let's just explain the game. So it's called the Towers of Hanoi, which you may or may not have heard before, but you could probably see already just by looking at the GUI that we've got involved. You kind of have an idea probably of what this involves. It's a reasonably well-known game, just you may not have heard of the exact name of it, because I sure didn't. But anyway, let's run this, and let's see what it looks like. So it looks exactly like what you just saw. And what we've got is we've got a counter for the number of moves. Ideally, you should be able to finish the game in 15 moves, which is considered the perfect score. And if you don't, then I believe you can finish it in about 17 to 18 moves, and that's less than perfect score, and otherwise you may have just taken a sort of very different route and done way more moves than you need to. So we've got the reset button, which allows you to get things back to this initial position. We've also got this animate button, and what this does is it basically plays the game for you. And it kind of cheat codes you in the sense that it'll tell you exactly how to play this game and what the winning moves are in order to achieve the perfect game in 15 moves. So, as you can see, it's gone ahead and done that, and we've completed the game. Or, well, the game's completed itself in 15 moves, and you can see the different moves that have been made in order to get to this position. And yeah, you can see the different orders of disks and pegs that have been used in order to get there. So that's kind of the main visual representation. More than anything else, I mean, like the making of the GUI in itself was pretty straightforward. All these are just some labels with some color properties, but what was tricky, obviously, is making the game logic. So we needed to be able to move pegs, we needed to have the overall grid that was, I believe, stored in this board class that we've got here. So I won't go into too much detail because it's been quite a while and I can't actually remember very much of what I've done in terms of the coding. But the board class, from what I remember, was the most or the biggest sort of place where the real logic of the board itself was stored. But then you'd have the disk class, which contained the real parameters and the aspects and properties of the disk themselves. Then you've got the disk move class, which I believe was for the purposes of storing the data of each move, and the program, which is part of the C# architecture, and then the actual main form, which is the GUI that you end up looking at. So I believe we look at the code of that, then we see a little bit more of the interaction logic. So, say for example, this is where we start seeing what actually happens when you mouse down on the disk. So when you start pressing down and starting your click, and then that has a whole bunch of the code, and you can see that there's some of the win condition data in that class as well. So so it'll check for some of those win conditions on mouse down. And then we've also got the drag enter and drag drop. So that's when you're trying to move something, and then now we've dragged entered onto that peg, and because that's a valid move, it's allowing us to do that. That's also a valid move, so it'll allow us to do that. It'll just allow us to move to the same peg because, well, that's just something that in this stage, since there's nothing else, that's also a valid move. But if we try to move a bigger disk onto a smaller disk, then it doesn't allow us to do that, because according to the rules of Towers of Hanoi, that is an invalid move. So it doesn't allow us to do that. And yeah, there's all the other sort of GUI elements like what happens with the animation and what happens with the reset button. So that resets the board. You can see that calls that reset function there, and it resets everything else like the move count and the list of moves and things like that. And yeah, you can see that the animation timer just doesn't even have a script really. It just sort of just allows it just well, basically what I ended up doing was I pretty much just got it to look at the move counter, and based on the move counter, since we're trying to go for a perfect game, or the game itself is trying to show us what a perfect game is going to look like, based on the number in the move counter, then it goes to the next move, and that basically allows it to just play itself. So I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the game architecture. I mean, I can't really go into too much more detail without making this video really long, so I think that's pretty much most of what needs to be demonstrated in this video. So I think I'll just leave it there. So yeah, once again, thanks very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at aquila.helpme.net, and yeah, well, I'll see you later.